Good afternoon and welcome to From Where We Are, stories of news and culture through the lens of USC in Southern California. I'm Fatima Gumuo and we're coming to you live in Studio B in USC's Annenberg Media Center.
And I'm Anthony Bettino. It's Wednesday, April 24th. On today's show, we'll have a live update from the USC student protest, Armenian Remembrance Day, and an energy drink lawsuit. All that and more from where we are.
But first, here's today's headlines. The Senate passed...
We're feeling really good. You know, it's not every day you can say you made the world truly a better place. But I think the Senate can say that tonight. And I'm very proud of what has happened.
The Senate passed a $95 billion foreign aid bill earlier Tuesday to support Ukraine and Israel. The package would include billions of dollars worth in weapons and military support and food and water and other humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza. After the bill is approved by the Senate, it will now be up to the Republican-led House to take it, change it, and reject it.
Congress has officially approved the ban on TikTok, giving TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, 1 year to sell or risk being removed from the App Store in the U.S. President Joe Biden signed the bill into law last Wednesday, solidifying the next steps in the national erasure of the wildly popular app.
The U.S. Department of Transportation announced on Wednesday that airlines will now require to show the full price of travel before passengers pay for their tickets. And if a flight is canceled or significantly changed, airlines are now required to give full cash refunds instead of vouchers. This is being announced as an attempt to expand consumer protections and crack down on airlines that are charging passengers high fees to check bags and change flights.
Today is Denim Day, a special day dedicated to showing support for victims of sexual assault. People across the world are encouraged to wear jeans and denim as a means of protest against misconceptions that surround sexual violence. The worldwide movement is also celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, after the first Denim Day event took place in Los Angeles in April 1999.
Ever wish you could pick up and go gambling in Vegas for the weekend but had no way to get there? Well, fear no more. Construction has begun on the Las Vegas monorail, a 3.9 mile automated transit system that will travel back and forth between Las Vegas and Los Angeles. The rail is expected to go public in 2028. That's it for today's headlines. USC has closed its gates into campus as hundreds of students, faculty, and staff continue to protest at Alumni Park. The protest began at 7 this morning with a yoga and meditation session, various discussions, and readings. A few hours later, protesters began pitching tents and camping out in preparation for the day's protest. But soon after, DPS told them to take the tents down. When protesters refused, DPS entered what they call their Gaza Solidarity Occupation and began to forcibly take the tents down. Protesters tried to stop DPS by standing in their way. In a video that's been broadcasted, one person is seen walking away from the commotion. We don't know why, but DPS can be seen grabbing him and throwing him to the ground. He was briefly detained by DPS, but was reportedly let go at the scene after a group of protesters surrounded the car and demanded him be released. That you can hear now.
Let him go! Let him go! Let him go! Let him go!
Aside from that incident, so far, the protest has remained relatively peaceful. DPS has remained on the scene, and Annenberg has confirmed LAPD are outside the university, donating riot gear that includes rubber bullets and zip ties. So far, they have not entered the campus. Tamara Amoayed is live at the scene at Alumni Park. Tamara, hello?
Yes, I'm standing at Alumni Park right now.
Hi, Tamara. Can you tell us the latest?
I am standing at Alumni Park where a DPS car just pulled up. They didn't say much, but they drove away real quick, and that's the first time they've actually interacted with students since the incident this morning. Other than that, there's about 200 students here. They have a bunch of posters. I can see one that says "Choose for Free Palestine" and one that said "No War with Our Tuition." Some have been here since as early as 5 a.m. this morning, but the protest officially started at 7. And I've heard through eyewitnesses that GFS and ASC have also been graffitied today with spray paint, with one message saying "Let Gaza Live" and one saying "Free Palestine."
So do you know why LAPD is coming on campus right now?
We're not sure. There's a heavy DPS presence anyways, but LAPD's been surrounding just far there haven't been any police interactions.
What organizations are endorsing this protest?
The two main ones I would say are probably Jewish Voice for Peace, JVP, and the Student Coalition Against Labor Exploitation, SCALE. They're the ones who kind of posted the update saying we're going to be meeting here with the schedule, and they're the ones kind of planning everything. But I know there are multiple organizations here. We've met with a few, like RevCom.
We definitely heard those helicopters you mentioned. It sounds like there's a lot of commotion. Are there any worries about safety?
Initially, no, but I think now just because DPS just closed up, there is some tension. People are kind of gathering. There are a lot of news stations here. I can see probably about 10 just in front of me. So I think something is stirring. But the protest itself is pretty peaceful.
Do you think that there's going to be a longer term plan for this protest beyond tonight?
Apparently, the protesters are planning on staying here until their list of demands are met. But there's a lot of anticipation about what's going to happen at 9 p.m. tonight when USC closes its campus gates. Technically, I believe no non-students are meant to be here after 9 p.m. So there's a lot of talk about what's going to happen to the people who are here right now who aren't students.
We hear a lot of the shouting going on. Do you know if they're yelling about the demands? Do you know what their demands are?
Their demands so far that we know of, they're demanding that USC breaks their ties with Israel. They're demanding for a full academic boycott of Israel, amongst like a short list of other things.
Well, thank you so much for the updates. Tomorrow we will check back in with you for any new things that are going on with this protest.
Perfect, thank you.
Meanwhile, USC Annenberg informed its faculty members that they have the option to teach online through the end of the week.
Earlier, we were able to talk to the current council member in the city of Burbank, Constantine Anthony, who previously served as mayor of Burbank.
I'm out here to support the students' right to protest, to peaceably assemble, to air their grievances. Unfortunately, that is not the case that's happening at Columbia University, and so I believe that a lot of what's happening here today is in response to the crackdown on the East Coast. We saw similar demonstrations also at Harvard and cropping up at small universities around the country. The kids here agree that it's not about one side or the other. It's about both sides coming together, and it's about the innocent civilians on the ground who always suffer when there's a war. The people in charge are the ones pulling the triggers, and it's the folks on the ground who get hit with the bullets. So when we call for a ceasefire, when we call for people to lay down their arms, we mean both sides. We mean all hostages released. We mean all prisoners of war released. So if you take away from this one thing, know that it's a peaceful movement. It's against Islamophobia. It's against anti-Semitism. It's about coming together and bringing humanity to the world.
Meanwhile, USC Provost Andrew Guzman sent a statement to the USC community by email. It said USC's, quote, highest priority and responsibility is to protect the safety of our community and ensure our academic programs and university activities continue. Adding that the university, quote, values freedom of expression and protects the right of every member of our community to express themselves and rejects hateful and harmful speech.
As protests around the country continue over the conflict between Gaza and Israel, it begs the question, how far does a protester's free speech extend? Sophie Inyang has a story.
Freedom of speech is one of the oldest rights possessed by Americans, but that is not to say it doesn't come with certain checks and balances regulating how far that speech can go. Earlier today, hundreds of pro-Palestine protesters set up tents on USC's main campus, joining other universities in a nationwide protest demanding a ceasefire in the Middle East. Tensions have risen following USC's announcement declaring they would no longer allow valedictorian Asna Tabassum to deliver her speech at this year's commencement. Attorney at the federal public defender in the Northern District of Indiana, Chad Pennington, shared some of his professional insights surrounding the matter of free speech on college campuses.
The concept, it's just a sliding scale. You know, a person has First Amendment rights, and there's certain designated government areas where those protections to free speech are particularly strong. Designated public forum, whatever it may be. And so the question becomes not so much whether the person has First Amendment rights, it's to what extent is University of Southern California authorized to limit those rights.
Private universities often do not receive the same level of scrutiny when it comes to restricting freedom of speech, despite the Leonard Law, which forbids all private non-religious universities in California from disciplining students for speech that is protected by the First Amendment or the California Constitution.
And generally, to limit those rights, it has to make a pretty strong justification for doing so. So I think that the way you want to think about the issue is not so much as a sliding scale, not so much can a person speak, but can the government entity regulate?
As pro-Palestine protests continue to unfold throughout the nation, especially on college campuses, many are afraid of the potential infringement on their First Amendment rights. For Annenberg Media, I'm Sophie Ignon.
The Armenian Youth Federation organized a protest in front of the Turkey Consulate General's office to commemorate the 109th year after the Armenian genocide. James Bao has the story.
A protest was held today in front of the Turkey Consulate General's office in Los Angeles for the 109th Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. Protesters are calling for recognition, reparations, and restitution by Turkey for the death of about 1.5 million Armenians in 1915, which modern-day Turkey will not recognize as a genocide. Preni Aliverdian, a member of the Armenian Youth Federation, says awareness is much needed as Armenians are still facing aggression.
And this year particularly is very important to us because 109 years after the Armenian genocide, we are still seeing traces of genocide in our homeland as well as in Artsakh, which is a piece of historical Armenian land. And in 2023, we saw the traces of genocide when 120,000 Armenian natives were pushed out of their ancestral homeland.
Executive board member of the Armenian Youth Federation, Kevork Madenlian, adds that the goal of these annual protests doesn't stop at commemorating the genocide.
Every year we come out here and do this protest to not only commemorate the genocide, but also make it known that especially in recent history, there have been further aggressions on Armenia by Azerbaijan and Turkey.
Fellow protester and the organization's media contact Jabib Makanian says the Turkish government needs to take more responsibility.
My ancestors were forcibly removed and killed out of their homes. I want my home back. It's very clear. I need the Turkish government to hold themselves accountable and take accountability and responsibility for their actions.
Makanian continued, saying that despite setbacks, they will continue to fight for the recognition of the Armenian genocide.
Today, the protest is mainly just to remind the Turkish consulate, their government, and the Los Angeles community that we are consistent and we are here every year, no matter what, especially as in recent years, the Armenian nation has seen further loss. It does not mean that we waver and it does not mean that we bend. We are always here and we can always fight on all fronts for our people and our genocide to be recognized.
The protest began at 12 p.m. and schools were closed in the Los Angeles and Glendale Unified School Districts for the commemoration. For Annenberg Media, I'm James Bao.
I'm Fatima Agamuo. We're glad you're with us for From Where We Are.
And I'm Anthony Bettino. It's 26 minutes past the hour. Coming up, we look at the future plans for Annenberg students. Reggie Bush gets his Heisman back. And talking with Thomas about USC football and more.
And now we're going back for another update from Tamara Al-Moayed, who's live on USC campus. Tamara, what's going on right now at the protest?
Do people seem to be leaving the protest, or are they staying there despite the alleged criminal activity they'd be facing?
I would say probably about 90% of the onlookers have left, but the people actually protesting will be affected.
Is it peaceful?
Is it peaceful still? Welcome. All right. Thank you, Tamara, for the live updates. Check USC Annenberg's social media and Instagram for more.
Prime Energy Drink, founded by internet personalities Logan Paul and KSI, is facing a lawsuit regarding the presence of forever chemicals in their energy drinks. Perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, or PFOS chemicals, are called forever chemicals because they do not break down in the environment or in the human body. That means once they're ingested, they'll be in your body your whole life. Medical experts say this is a health risk as the chemicals can cause harmful effects such as reproductive harm, developmental delays in children, increased cancer risk, reduced immune system response, higher cholesterol levels, and obesity risk. In a video uploaded to TikTok today, Logan Paul addressed the lawsuit against his product. He explained that just because there is a lawsuit does not mean that there is truth behind the lawsuit, and claimed that the independent study in conduct is, quote, bull. The study found that Prime contains 0.06 parts per trillion of forever chemicals. Even if this is true, which Paul contests, the EPA's newly announced enforceable levels of chemicals begins at 4.0 parts per trillion. Paul attacked several aspects of the lawsuit.
They're claiming that Prime has 0.06 ppt, parts per trillion. But that's interesting because the EPA says that anything under 1.1 ppt cannot be deemed as reasonably accurate, meaning they don't have the right tools or resources to even prove what they're claiming.
Prime has quickly become a popular drink and was named the fastest growing sports drink in history in January 2023. As such, Prime developed a loyal customer base. Last week, the court heard Prime's motion to dismiss. Prime is still waiting to hear the court's decision on their motion.
Graduation is coming up, which means students across campus are thinking about one thing: jobs. We spoke with Annenberg students to find out what their plans after the semester are. Alea Motwani has the story.
Since the pandemic, statistics show that the job market is tougher than ever. Students can expect to endure a 6-month job search after their initial application, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The job market is also more competitive today than ever, with applicant pools being larger than ever. In 2022, there was a job opening for every applicant. Today, there are at least 2 applicants per job opportunity, meaning students and postgrad students need to search harder than ever to secure both full-time employment and temporary summer positions. As summer approaches, Solana Espino, a sophomore journalism major, is feeling the pressure to find a summer internship.
I think just I wasn't prepared and I didn't know when things were opening or closing, and I kind of missed like the deadlines for a lot of stuff this summer. So now I'm kind of just doing like a Hail Mary to things that are still open.
Espino says of her experience that she would advise other students to begin their job search early.
If you have somewhere that you're looking for a position, make sure you get all the information for it ahead of time and, just put yourself in the best place for success.
Eric Gay, a junior journalism student, agrees with Espino.
I would say definitely in my sophomore year when I was applying, I feel like I was pretty late in the game. And then maybe not casting a wide enough pool, apply to as many as you can. Sophomore, it was very little, and I know below 10, and I would say this year I applied to close to 20, so I doubled the number in a year. But yeah, just keep applying and start early.
Ye is spending his summer working for Tegna at their Fox 43 station in Pennsylvania. He said that his biggest advice to other students would be to follow up with the companies they've applied to.
After I applied, I would find whoever the news director was. You can find their emails online, and then just email them directly, be hey, I just applied to your thing. Just express your interest, and if they don't get back to you in a week, follow up again. Hey, just let you know I'm still really interested in them, in this position I applied to, because that way you build a connection, and then they can help bump you up.
Zach Rigney, the career advisor at Annenberg Career Development, says that the biggest mistake Annenberg students make is, quote, waiting on that one perfect opportunity, end quote. Rigney says that this is what prevents students from applying to more jobs and broadening their job choices.
different processes have different timelines as well as different needs. We wouldn't want you to be so focused on one that it prevents you from still looking, still applying to other things. And that usually really delays people in their process, especially if you're like applying to a bunch of things and not hearing back. That's usually what it is that you're waiting too much for certain ones and not applying to others because you're really hoping on one. Just keep applying as soon as you see something.
Rigney emphasizes that students looking for jobs tend to get discouraged after seeing their peers get lucky.
Sadly, as helpful as LinkedIn is, seeing, hey, my 20 friends already have full-time jobs and I'm still looking or I'm still interviewing, am I behind? And that's not the case at all.
He says that everybody has their own timeline and that students worried about not finding a job should remember that different opportunities hire at different times.
Our colleagues at UCLA and other schools that have more a quarter system, they get out for the summer or graduate later, so there are going to be plenty of jobs still posted later.
That means there is hope for any students that don't have a position locked down yet. With the semester nearly over, many students are still in the process of applying and interviewing. For all students, congratulations on finishing their degree or their semester, and good luck on the job hunt. For Annenberg Media, I'm Alea Motwani.
In 2010, Reggie Bush relinquished his Heisman after receiving benefits under the table during his Trojan career. Now, in 2024, where NIL, name, image, and likeness is a priority for college athletes, Bush will again receive his Heisman after 14 years. Joel Robles has a story.
And that's Reggie Bush being Reggie Bush. What a beautiful play by Reggie Bush.
This Wednesday morning, the Heisman Trust announced that controversial USC legend Reggie Bush's 2005 Heisman will be reinstated. Additionally, he will be invited to all future ceremonies, starting this upcoming 2024 season. Bush received his prestigious award this morning at the Trust Summit meeting in Florida. 15 former Heisman winners, including former Florida Gator Tim Tebow and former UT Austin Longhorn Ricky Williams, were present for Bush's reinstatement. In a published article from ESPN, president of the Heisman Trophy Trust, Michael Comerford, said, "We are thrilled to welcome Reggie Bush back to the Heisman family in recognition of his collegiate accomplishments. We considered the enormous changes in college athletics over the last several years in deciding that now is the right time to reinstate the trophy for Reggie." As NIL entered the college landscape, Bush campaigned for the reinstatement of his Heisman, arguing that college athletes were now able to profit off their name, image, and likeness. Many fans of Bush stood beside him throughout this 14-year-long journey. His supporters included USC donor Brian Kennedy. In an effort to campaign for the reinstatement of his award, Kennedy introduced 15 billboards across freeways and busy intersections across Los Angeles. An Instagram post from Reggie Bush reads, "No one can take from you what God has for you." For Annenberg Media, I'm Joel Robles.
This is our last show of the semester, and what would our final show be without talking with Thomas? So let's welcome back Annenberg Media Sports Editor Thomas Johnson for our grand finale.
Anthony, it's great to be here for the last show of the semester.
Thomas, we're glad to have you back. Today we have a lot of football for you to talk about, and more specifically, Trojan football. The big news from this morning is former Trojan running back Reggie Bush got his Heisman back. The NCAA has decided to reinstate Bush's trophy due to current college athletes now being paid through NIL deals. Thomas, why do you think now was the time for the decision to be made?
Obviously, Reggie Bush has been campaigning for this ever since NIL was allowed. Athletes were able to profit off of their NIL, as the story talked about. So I think it's just been a long effort. I don't know if there was any point in the specific timing. It's been a long time coming, though, I think is the answer to that question.
Well, now it's back. How does this affect USC's football history and legacy now they officially have 8 Heismans?
Well, they now have the most Heismans of any college in the NCAA, and most people agreed with that, even though Reggie's was taken away. It's not like he was doing steroids. It was off the field, which is why his Heisman was taken away. So most people agreed that USC had the most Heismans. One, Caleb Williams got his last season, but now it truly cements it in the record books that USC currently has the most Heismans of any university.
Right, with USC having the most Heismans, what do you think this means just for college football and the Heisman Trophy moving forward?
It's really interesting just because it's been 14 years since Reggie Bush's Heisman was taken away. So I think we're seeing a shift with the Heisman Trophy, and maybe the NCAA even, that just because it might have not been legal at the time when Reggie Bush and all that controversy happened, the fact that they're rolling NIL out now, they're becoming a little bit more soft with these regulations, and even posthumously, I mean, not posthumously, but after the incident took place, they're being a little bit more lax with the regulations.
Well, it's great to see USC at the center of this history-making decision. But now shifting gears from former Trojans to current ones. Tomorrow night is the NFL Draft, and USC has 16 players looking to go from Trojans to Projans. This includes notable names like Taj Washington, Marshawn Lloyd, and of course, the projected number 1 overall pick, another former Heisman winner, Caleb Williams. It looks like Williams will be playing for the Bears in the fall. But Thomas, do you think this is a good fit for him?
I think so, just because the Bears were not a bad team last year. I think they had a 7-10 record, which is almost unheard of from a team with the number 1 overall pick. But luckily, they were able to acquire the Carolina Panthers pick, which is why they're in that number 1 spot. So I think it's a good fit, just because we normally see these quarterbacks going at number 1 to god-awful teams, 2-15 teams, 1-16 teams. This is a 7-10 team that he's taking over. They added a new piece in Keenan Allen this offseason, a good offensive weapon for Caleb. I think it's as good a spot he can have in that number 1 overall position.
Let's not forget they also got DeAndre Swift.
Of course they did. Yes, great running back. I was really hoping he was going to do well with the Detroit Lions, but he hasn't really gotten that role, that big role, and now he's going to be with the Chicago Bears. So I expect big things out of Swift, Williams, Keenan Allen, all these guys.
Right, so while Caleb is the biggest name, we can't forget about the other Trojans. Are you expecting to see a good turnout for the rest of the group, or are most Trojans going undrafted?
I think so. It's weird because it seems like Taj Washington specifically is a criminally underrated prospect. He was criminally underrated at USC and turned into one of USC's best receivers. I think he's only going to go in the 4th or 5th round, but we saw today Amon-Ra St. Brown was a 4th round pick out of USC at wide receiver, and now he's the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. So we can see these wide receivers coming out of USC, Taj Washington, Brendan Rice, another prospect, who might be underrated now. A couple years down the line, they're going to look like steals in the draft. So those two, Marshawn Lloyd, I think, can be a great running back in the league as well.
Thomas, I'd really like to hear more about your thoughts on Marshawn Lloyd, because personally, I think Marshawn Lloyd, when he gets his hand on the ball, he can move. And we've seen him score touchdowns. He's a very good running back, but he has that Achilles heel in the fumbles. And in pros, that's not going to fly, especially with those coaches. So how do you think he's going to fare?
That's a great question, because you nailed it right on the head. It's the fumble issues. He had multiple very costly fumbles this season, and he had, I think, average 7 yards a rush this past season. But the fumbles killed his draft stock. So if he figures it out in the NFL, which these are NFL coaches we're talking about, if anyone can figure out his fumbling issues, it'll be them. But if he can't, he's probably not going to be in the league in 5 years. But if he can, he could be a great starting running back, I'd say.
Do you have any sleeper picks for the Trojans in the draft? Do you think anyone will be drafted sooner than expected?
I would say Solomon Byrd is a name to look out for. I don't honestly think he gets drafted, so I don't know if this properly answers your question, but he had a great 2 seasons at USC at that rush end position after transferring over from Wyoming. I think Solomon Byrd will make an NFL roster at some point, if that's a later pick in the draft or if that's through undrafted free agency. I think Solomon Byrd probably won't be a star at the next level or even a starter. Could be a high-end backup, though.
Well, Thomas, you really do know a lot about sports, and unfortunately, that's all we have for sports for today. Thomas, it's been a pleasure talking ball with you all semester long. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, as always.
As mentioned last week, Matisse couldn't come in today, so last week was our last day talking about esports, but we loved our time with him, and we hope to see him back next semester.
We're going back to Tamara Amoed, who is live at the USC campus protest one more time. Tamara, can you hear us? Tamara, what's going on right now? What are you seeing? We hear a lot of yelling going on. What are they saying?
What are the police actually doing currently?
So people cannot leave? Are they allowed to pass?
All right, thank you so much. Are they pulling them out? All right.
Thank you for that update, Tamara. That was Tamara Amayed with Annenberg Media.
And that's all we have time for on today's From Where We Are. Marie-Louise Leone is our executive producer. Sam Bittman, Jack Waterman, and Issa Johnson are our producers. We had help from Marco Alvarez, Yeji Zhang, Toby Groom, and Daishalyn Satcher.
Our board operator is Grayson Solomon. Our live stream manager is Connor Wyckoff. Our technical advisor today is Matthew Buxbaum, and Derek Renfro composed our theme music. We want to give a shout out to everyone who helped us this semester. Our coach, Tina Rubio, our technical advisor, Sebastian Gruba, Graham Clark, our digital media producer, and our live stream manager, Maria Robles.
Today's show is the last Wednesday show of the spring semester. Thank you for listening all semester long. Fall, and as always, subscribe to From Where We Are on whatever channel you're listening to right now.
Finally, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Annenberg Radio. I'm Anthony Bettino.
And I'm Fatima Agumuo. From all of us at Annenberg Radio, wherever you are, we thank you for joining us
from where we are.